Welcome to Practical Business Technology, where we keep you in the know about technology's impact on business. Today's show is sponsored by the Maricopa County Bar Association, and our host is Dave Kinsey, author and owner of Total Networks. Hi, today I'm here with Dave.
Hi.
And we are talking about passwords and password security. You know, I read somewhere that the average person has 130 accounts.
That's all?
And so I actually logged into my password manager and checked. I have 500. So I can't possibly remember all 500 of those passwords. Hence why we're here today to talk about how do you manage all of those accounts. So what's the easy answer for how you manage 500 passwords, Dave?
Don't have 500 passwords that you know, because no human being could know 500 passwords. Yeah, I mean, really, when you think about managing passwords, obviously everybody knows, right, hey, my password should not be password or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which I guess, I believe that is theoretically the most popular password is actually that. The password is a very popular password, but I think that's only maybe fourth on the popularity list. So no, don't use those passwords. We actually had an earlier podcast where we talked about two-factor authentication, which is a way to augment passwords, but you do want to start out with good passwords to begin with. So yeah, when it comes to passwords, number one, a long password is better than a short password. Ways you can have a long password is to have a phrase. So a bunch of words strung together could make a strong password. You know, they could be words that you might remember.
Really, having it be longer is better.
Yes.
So, you know, having some silly phrase that you can remember, but it's maybe harder to guess, mixed with some uppercase and lowercase and special characters. But yeah, definitely. I mean, what I've read is that, you know, if your password's only 8 characters and it's either something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or if it's a dictionary word, that it's very easy for the computer programs to hack into those. And even if that dictionary word, you might think you're clever by replacing the A with the @ sign or replacing an O with a 0. But guess what? The hackers that are using brute force try those combinations as well. So avoiding dictionary words, I think, is probably one of the best ways.
Yeah, or you could.
Unless it's a phrase.
Yeah, but if you put multiple random words together, like say you had window, blinds, picture, chair, table, cloth. I don't know. I'm terrible at coming up with these. You do want to figure out something where you just kind of think of random words, maybe. Something that might be personal to you, maybe like could be a mascot for your team, for like say a football team, and a random object, something that you might remember, and if you make it, if you put a string enough of those together, you might have a 60 character password that you can easily remember, and it can be strong.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about why you need a strong password, but I mean, why do we talk about security in general?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, passwords are not great security, which is why there is multi-factor authentication, which we talked about earlier, which is having the concept of something you know, like a password, augmented with something you have, like your phone, where you might have a code or what have you. But having a strong password to begin with is an important layer. Security is all about layers, and so having a strong password to begin with. So number one, you want to, in a business setting, you want to have as few passwords to remember as possible. So very common business passwords, people will have maybe a Microsoft network, which would have a thing called Active Directory. where you have this is your login to your computer system, and then you're going to want to set up things to use that authentication where you can, so that way you only have the one password to remember. When people leave the company, you only have one account to disable, or disabling that account will disable access generally to the business's information. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, that there's limits to what you can do with that, but people will have more accounts outside of just the accounts for their network. You might have a login to different websites, and so there are different solutions to manage that. You may want to use password managers so that you don't actually have to remember all those passwords.
So how does a password manager work? You say you don't have to remember all those passwords.
Well, you have a master password that you remember to unlock the password manager, but it encrypts or basically hides from anyone that might want to look at it that doesn't have your key all of the passwords to various sites. So you can have 500 sites where you have different passwords and you never reuse the same password, because that's one of the real risks with accounts from where you log in to different websites, is that, say, that password could get hacked. So you don't know the security that service or that website is using to secure your password. It may be that people, at the worst case, they're storing passwords unencrypted and somebody grabs all the passwords and can use them. That would be really bad practice. Probably most important sites you go to don't have that, but they may have their encrypted files, or they will have encrypted files, which are not easily usable. But if it's important enough, it's a site where there's a lot of potential passwords, criminals will try to hack and break into the weaker passwords, especially on those sites. And then if you reuse the password on one site, then you now have access to all the sites where you reuse that password potentially. So that's
I think that's really the danger, because while a lot of sites encrypt their passwords, not all of them do. And so if you use the same password in 10 places, one of those didn't have good security practices, it gets breached, and now someone might try that password in other more secure sites that you care about.
Absolutely. So yeah, you never want to reuse passwords. And the only way that a mere mortal would be able to do that, because we're not computers that can just instantly recall all these passwords. We're human beings with limited ability to store information, or at least to recall the information. And so that's why we use computers. We use password managers where the computer stores all those passwords. I have a bunch of accounts where I have no idea what the password is, because my password manager knows about that. And of course, protecting then your password manager with an extremely strong password, two-factor authentication, and an extremely strong password means a very long password. That, because you don't want that password manager to be hacked.
Yeah, I agree. So, you hear about breaches in the news all the time. I don't know how often they are happening where they know just the password, but I think that still happens, where employees are using weak passwords across many places, we've even heard silly stories where someone has their password written on a Post-it note sitting right next to their computer.
Yeah, that obviously is not a good
anybody
situation.
Can walk by and see that Post-it note, and then heaven forbid you're using that as your master password or as a shared password across multiple sites.
Yeah, and so this is one reason why using a password manager would hopefully get rid of any incentive to try to use Post-it notes. Post-it notes are bad news.
But the biggest reason that we don't want someone to hack into our account is because data's worth a lot.
Yeah, basically.
There's been companies that have gone out of business.
Well, yeah, if somehow information gets breached that you were, you're responsible for as a business owner, it goes to trust. People work with people that they know, like, and trust. If you prove to be untrustworthy with their information, people won't want to work with you. That's a real risk. And so it's the right thing to do, and it's also good business. So to protect your passwords and protect your security.
So if I'm just have a personal account, I can get a password manager, and I probably could Google what different ones are.
Mm-hmm.
Do they make password managers that businesses can use so that all the employees are using the same system?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really there's three kind of approaches to how this works. Once again, leveraging master password systems like Active Directory. There's also what's called single sign-on. The idea is you sign on once to this site, and then it lets you use that password. Basically it automatically logs you on at other places. And then there's password managers, and some have both password management capability and single sign-on capability. So, like an example of one, I'm just going to pick probably one of the most popular ones out there is LastPass. LastPass has a personal, free password manager, but they also have what's called LastPass Enterprise. And the LastPass Enterprise has all these features that would be appropriate to a business, where you might have passwords that the best practice is to never share a password. Okay, you never ever want to share a password. You want to have your username and your password be for one person. Unfortunately, not all businesses have gotten the message there, and so there might be cases where you are forced to use some sort of company password. Well, you can grant access to an employee using LastPass Enterprise as an example, where the employee never knows what the password is, but has access to it, and you can revoke it. Or you can have it where the logins that they have there, it may not be shared, but it gives one place to manage all the logins that are associated with your business. So
how would an employee be able to log in without seeing the password?
That's because the software will automatically log you in to those sites, but you never see the password. So It'll pass those credentials onto the site and log you in, but you don't get a chance to actually see it.
And then the enterprise versions, they have audit trails and ways
Absolutely.
to see who logged in, when, where.
Correct, and they also have tools to be able to audit the security, so you can see how secure are your passwords, how secure the passwords your employees are using, how well are they managing the security. Security is about layers. One of the passwords are really not great security because passwords can be guessed, passwords can be hacked, but unfortunately passwords are still foundational today. So you want to layer on additional layers, multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication or more. But having a good password to start is important to begin with.
And then should you change your password every so often?
There's different opinions on this. According to NIST, their current standard, NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. Implementing security requires having a methodology. You have to have a way to implement secure systems. And so there are best practices that are defined by NIST. NIST has security experts that are looking at what security practices are effective, what are ineffective, what are no longer effective. And so they look at what is the leading best practices for security today. They issue from time to time new guidance. And NIST's guidelines currently are actually that you want to have a very strong password, which means a very long password, talking 20 characters, 25, 30 characters, go longer is better. But the advice used to be to change it on a regular basis. The problem with that, if you're forcing people to change things on, say, a quarterly basis or that frequently, you get people sometimes writing stuff down, and that defeats the whole purpose.
Or they just add a number, like it used to be Dragon 1 and now I'll make it Dragon 2.
Sure.
Or, that's not really changing it very much.
Sure. Of course, it's got to be longer than Dragon 1 or Dragon 2. We'll do Dragon Cat Wall purple 5273 hike question mark, and then put an exclamation point or whatever. But yeah, the advice changes over time, and right now the current thinking, there are certain sites, there are certain businesses or whatnot that may want to require you to change passwords on a somewhat regular basis. I am still a believer in changing passwords, having very few passwords that changing it on perhaps an annual basis, so that it's an event. You have to change it and remember it. But if you require it too often, you usually don't get what you're really looking for.
Right. Well, and probably it's a good idea to maybe have a checklist for yourself once a year to do an audit of what passwords do you use, how secure are they, are there any that are repeated, have any been hacked?
Yep. And one thing, some good password managers can report on hacks, like LastPass is one. I'm just going to go to that one as an example. Once again, I'm not recommending any particular one. There are so many out there that are good, and I don't want to point you to any one particular one, but you can, like LastPass will tell you that sites have been breached. It will also point out if you are reusing a password on more than one site, and so it'll say don't do that and help you. It can automatically generate a password for you, or you can type in just a crazy long password. Once again, you're really going to want to make sure the requirement's long. If you don't need to know the password, shoot for 25 characters, 30 characters, something really long. You're never going to need to type it in. Your password manager is going to know it, and it's going to give you a good password. But once again, say, like, if you have the LastPass, your password to LastPass should once again be very long, and it should be something that's not crazy for you to type or crazy for you to remember. Because if you lose it, that's bad news. But and it should be something that you need to type in on a regular basis. It should log you. You should be auto logged out of the password manager and have to log in, say after 20 minutes of inactivity, 15 minutes of inactivity.
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, and in addition to that, another way would be to use identity theft monitoring or dark web monitoring, so that if you get alerted that a password's been breached or password's been stolen, that you can go in and change that password.
Yeah, like say if your credentials, there are services that will look. We have a service that we provide for our clients where we're looking for credentials that are for sale on the dark web. So the dark web is that's where all the criminals are. So if this is not something you're going to go into Google and find these sites, these are sites you're using specialized browsers like Tor and whatnot, and this is where the criminals can be anonymous, and you can find that there are things for sale. But there are services that are looking for that and can alert you.
Anything you'd like to add as we wrap this up, Dave?
Yeah, have as few passwords as possible. Make them as long as possible. Know only a few passwords. Use a password manager. And absolutely, absolutely, absolutely use multi-factor authentication. A code on your phone or an app on your phone that authenticates. There are multiple ways to do this, but use that multi-factor authentication to protect your password manager, absolutely, and use it to protect really all the accounts that you really care about, particularly accounts where if you might have email associated with it, or that might be used for your identity, like Facebook, like maybe your Gmail account, but really just all of them. Use two-factor authentication and have a long password. They're both really important security layers.
Yeah, email is a good point, just as I'm thinking about it, because if someone knows your email password, that's if you do a password reset for
Correct.
all these sites, you get an email, and that's how you would able to maliciously steal all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, if your username is, say, a Gmail password, which is common. You may have your Gmail. It's common to have your email as your login. If it is your Gmail account that your login for 50 sites, and somebody gets access to your Gmail account, well, all those 50 sites can now be passwords reset to there, because the email account is no longer yours if the criminal owns it and can perform those password resets.
So that's why you need two-factor.
Two-factor,
on your email.
multi-factor, two-factor, three-factor.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to go change my master password because it's been a year, and I think I could make it more complex.
Make it longer. Yeah.
I will make it longer.
Go long.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
All right. Thank you.